What's it like for you just being a dad? You always have a smile on your face. You just seem like you really, really enjoy it.
I've always wanted to be a dad. It's amazing. I always say having kids, honestly, is the greatest thing I've ever done. But if you don't want kids, don't have kids.
What are your thoughts on, are we ever even really ready for it?
We're not.
Having that dad that's there had to be some challenges going on for you at that time.
Luckily, my dad stayed in the picture because my stepdad's a jerk. No, just kidding. My stepdad was the one that was on set with me in Sandlot the whole time.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Statistic might surprise you. There was a study that was divorce rate's 50%.
Is it really?
When you were writing this book, you were really writing this probably your boys in mind.
I don't think I could have written this book until having kids. It puts life in perspective. Like, it goes fast and you don't want to miss it.
I would love for you to give us some advice on what you have found.
It's a balance, man. You want them to experience things and not just say, I don't like it.
19 years of marriage. What are you guys disciplined to do in your relationship that allows you guys to thrive?
One thing we do is...
What's up, Patrick, man? Great to have you here, brother.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You know, it sounds really weird now I'm saying it, but you've been in my living room for like 2 decades.
Yeah. At least it's not your bedroom. It's your living room, you know?
Yeah, man. You know what's so funny, man, is so I've got 4 boys. I have 18-year-old, a 17-year-old, 11-year-old, 8-year-old. And we go out and we play all the time, especially when the weather's nice. And my 18-year-old, like his favorite movie is The Sandlot. And he watches it all the time. And one of the things that came up in conversation with us is he was like, Dad, you grew up, you know, in that era. I'm like, well, kind of. I was like, the film was more in the 60s, but I grew up, yeah, like playing baseball with my friends. Like there was no such thing as screens. He's like, what was that like? I was like, freaking magical, man. Like it was magical. Like we did not have anything but each other and it was great. So I'm sure over the years, man, your childhood, you and I are right around the same age, but I'm sure that's how you grew up as well to some degree.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a cool way of saying it, magical, you know, it's, there's not enough of it out there now, but that's why I tell my kids, I'm like, you don't have to be good at sports, but you got to play. You got to do it. You got to try at least, because you're not going to be sitting here playing, you know, roadblocks or whatever it's called for hours and hours and hours, you know. Right. I'll let you do it a little bit, but you got to get out there. You know, there's a great line in Sandlot, which is the mom says, go out there, get dirty, scrape your knees, get in trouble, you know, and you're like live, guys, live life.
Heck yeah, man. It's funny though. Like we'll push our kids outside and luckily they know how to play. We put a lot of tight parameters around the screens and stuff like that. But dude, man, when their friends come over, like, and I'm talking like the 8-year-old and like 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds, like they all have phones and like, they're like, we're like, go out and play. And they're like, and they look at us like we have 2 heads. Like, what are we supposed to do out there? I'm like, like, really, man? Come on. I
know. When they get off iPads, I get bored because you're on an iPad.
Right.
But it's funny. My wife and I, because I have an 8-year or 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, they're almost 8 and 5, but when they're playing nicely together, we just look and we're like, this is beautiful. It's so infrequent. It's so infrequent that they're not beating the heck out of each other.
Oh my God. Yeah, man. You're a boy dad, just like me, man.
Yeah.
Let's actually start there. You have 2 boys. First of all, what's it like for you just personally, just being a dad? Every time I see you online, you know, kids involved, family involved, that kind of thing. Like you always have a smile on your face. You just seem like you really, really enjoy it, genuinely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've always wanted to be a dad. It keeps you on your toes. I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do. My wife is an incredible mom. And I mean, my wife is almost too good of a mom. She's like Mary Poppins, like all the kids call her Mary Poppins. And she plays with them all the time. So then I roll in and they're like, let's play. And I'm like, no, Dad's going to put his feet up for a second. And so she makes me look bad. She's so good, you know, so I got a lot to live up to, but it's amazing. It's, you know, I always say like having kids honestly is the greatest thing I've ever done. But if you don't want kids, don't have kids. That's for sure. Like if you're not sure, don't do it because you live for them now, you know, and you know that you've been living for them for 18 years now. You got 4 or so, and it's a beautiful way to live, but you better want that because it ain't, you know, it's not coffee shops in Paris with you and your spouse anymore, you know?
I agree, man. I think we either want it or we don't. What are your thoughts on, are we ever even really ready for it?
We're not. I mean, I guess Yeah, my wife and I started a little late. You know, we kind of did some traveling in our early 30s. And so maybe I was more ready for it. But I saw something online that said men don't fully mature till 42. And I was like, that checks out. That's about right. I feel like I just fully matured like a couple of years ago. So I think you're right. I don't think you ever were ready for it. Like, how could you be ready for it? We're just stumbling along, hoping we're not messing them up, you know?
My gosh, amen to that, man. Yeah, it's we I wouldn't say we got started. I guess we got started average time. Like with our where I had my first one, I was 30, and then he's almost 19 now. And but my 11, especially my 8-year-old, like my 8-year-old, I had him when I was almost 42. So like I'm like, oh, I'm just like starting over again at 42. This is a little different.
I know. Yeah, some really good friends of mine have 2 older boys, and they just had, I think they're in their teens, and they just had, they have a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, so they started over big time. Yeah,
it's like siblings with an only child. That's kind of what that's like. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I want to just rewind the tape a little bit. One of the cool things that I think a lot of guys come on here and they share is like just some of their own upbringing, just some of the things that they might have learned from their own fathers, and or maybe even some of the challenges that were, present during childhood that you had to learn some lessons through some toughness through. But I would love for you to just share anything about your childhood that was really meaningful to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the number one lesson I learned from my dad was, my parents split when I was right before Sandlot. So I know, yeah, I moved out to LA with my mom, and my mom really raised me from, that point. My dad was very much in the picture, but I'm from Boston originally, so that's 3,000 miles, But I would say probably the number one lesson I learned from him is just sort of like the value of a man is his ability to help other people. My dad's always, done a lot of philanthropic things in his life. And I think that's something I took from him the most is, it's not all about you, it's about helping people. And sometimes you're so stuck in your own problems and then you realize, oh, wait, there's 8 billion other people and there's billions of others with way bigger problems. And it puts it in perspective. So I can't say that I always remember that, You can definitely have selfish thoughts and things like that. But I think that's probably something I learned from him pretty well. And, my mom, I mean, I couldn't tell you what I didn't learn from her, everything from how to, be a young man and how to treat women right, how to be a good father and navigate the world of Hollywood and friendships and, things like that. So, yeah, I'm lucky to have good parents.
Oh, man. How old were you when you moved to LA and right before the Sandlot?
I was 13. So I went to boarding school in Oregon for a couple of years, and then it was an all-you-could-eat buffet, so I got really fat. My mom pulled me out. True story. I think she also missed me because I was pretty young. But so then I came to LA, and she sent me like to an army boot camp. I kid you not, for like 3 months, and I lost a bunch of weight. Not really, but it was just this school out in the desert, and I got, just building cabins, and it was kind of cool. So I got in a little bit of shape, and then I always wanted to be an actor. So we were staying at this house, and this photographer walked by and said, "Ooh, I love your fence. Can I shoot my models in front of your fence?" And my mom said, "Sure, if you shoot my son for free." And that's how I got my first headshots. And then Sandlot was basically my first audition, and I booked it and was off and filming in Utah.
Wow. Yeah. And Chauncey was on the podcast not too terribly long ago, and he told me that you guys like all lived like in an apartment complex.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating. But going back to 13 years old, I mean, like my mom was married 3 times, and she was always in and out of relationships. And I remember specifically certain ages that I was at where there was either a man present or there wasn't. But that age, man, 13 years old, that's a real fork on the road for a young man. And so
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's interesting to just think about like that, because both of my parents, after they split, got married to the people that they're with to this day. Yeah. So it just was funny hearing you say that, because I never had that sort of Dennis Leary Sandlot experience, with the stepdad. Like, I mean, excuse me, I do have a stepdad, but I didn't have that experience of in and out of my life, different men, which is interesting to hear you say that. I kind of cut you off, but I was like, oh, that's weird. I didn't have that. I never had that. Like boyfriends, dating. Like, I don't know how it would have been seeing my mom do that.
Yeah. It's, I mean, that's definitely it's definitely an experience for sure. But the thing that when you shared that with me, the age that you were at, and then about ready to film, obviously this iconic movie. I mean, for a young man, that's a pivotal age, because that's like, I'm not necessarily a boy anymore. I'm not necessarily a man yet, but I'm kind of like right there in the middle. And there's a former podcast guest of mine who shared this term with me called liminal, which is Latin for, I think it's like this fork in the road, right? Where you can go one of two ways. It's like one way could be not so good. The other way could go like pretty good. But having that dad that's there, I'm curious, what was, there had to be some challenges going on for you at that time.
Yeah. I mean, luckily my dad stayed in the picture because my stepdad's a jerk. No, just kidding. No, my stepdad actually was the one that was on set with me in Sandlot the whole time. And he's actually a great dude. He almost was just like, like my dad was always my dad. And my mom was always my mom. And my dad's wife never filled in mom. And my stepdad never really filled in dad. They were more friends, and we're friends to this date. Sometimes my dad will come out to LA with his wife and they'll stay with my mom and her husband. Like, so they're close still. And that was important. And I think that was liminal. How do you say it?
Yeah, liminal.
I think that fork in the road, they did a good job of not making me sort of go down the wrong one, hating my parents, hating, this and that. And so kudos to them, because it could have been rougher than it was. I also think, people ask, like, do you want your kids to get into the movies at a young age? And you said it right. I was a young man. I was not yet a man, and I was not a boy anymore. I was a teenager. And people say, like, how did you not get, sucked into Hollywood? Well, because I wasn't a child actor. I was a teenage actor. After Sandlot, I was on a couple movies. And then before you know it, I was 16 with a GED and flying to Romania by myself and filming, and flying to Canada and filming. So like my college was movies, and I was on my own. So I think that's the answer of like, how did it not like mess me up too bad? It was, a good, solid family background, and also that I didn't do it too young. I don't know that I'd want my kids to do it at 6, 7, look at Nickelodeon, look at that documentary. I had none of that stuff happen to me. I was 13, I was a 13-year-old dude that was like, screw you. You want me to go in that room with you? Like I was big enough to defend myself, like, not that it doesn't happen to people bigger. I'm sure it does, but still, like, I was almost a man.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. I just, and maybe challenges was the wrong word, but it's more like maybe even I don't understand what's going on. Like as a kid, like it's like, wow, like changes are happening. Like I'm about ready to, film this movie. My parents kind of just went their separate ways. They're with other people now, and like this is like kind of a big change. And I remember actually the reason I asked that is because I remember being that age myself and wondering like, this is interesting. Like not a lot of my friends are going through what I'm going through, but this is just sort of interesting. You're just sort of there absorbing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is interesting. I don't know. As a father now too, like my wife and I talk about it. We're like, we're stuck with each other at least until they're 18. Like we want them to have that, like we joke, we're like, even if we didn't want to be together, we'd stay together for them because we want them to have that, family life. And luckily my wife and I are still in love. So
that's awesome, man.
I want to be there for them, and unfortunately divorce messes with that a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I think, how long have you guys been married now?
A long time, 19 years this October.
That's awesome.
So we were married 11 years before we had kids.
That's amazing. You guys have over a decade to get to know each other, and here you guys are 19 years married, still in love. Jessica and I, my wife and I have been together we've been married for 21, and our relationship is great. And this statistic might surprise you, might not, but like there was a study that was done not too terribly long ago that everybody knows that the divorce rate's 50%, but what a lot of people don't know
is it really?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's 50, actually almost 51%, but
50-50 shot. Ouch. That's not great. I mean, it checks out. My wife and I were looking at our wedding photos and being like, third divorce, third divorce, third divorce. You know, it's anyway, go on. But that's crazy. I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, 50%. But, you know, here's the crazy thing, though. Couples that actually stay together. So the 50% that actually stay together, or take it like this, the couples that actually walk down the aisle, right? Only 12% of couples that get married can actually identify their relationship as, this is working. It's great. We're in love. It's awesome. I really wouldn't change much. The other 88% are either split up, divorced, settled, or completely emotionally and physically disconnected. Like, that's,
wait. So it's 50. You're saying it's 88% of people. So it's only 12% are happily married.
correct. Isn't that crazy?
That's brutal. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is like, what's worse, not being happily married or, you know, or like being together and not happy or splitting? Like it almost seems like being together and happy is worse. Like kids aren't fools. They'll know, you know,
Oh,
like,
they know. For
yeah,
sure.
if my wife and I argue, I can see them go, what's happening? You know,
What's
like,
happening?
yeah. So imagine if they would just know if you hated each other.
They can, you know, it's funny. I think a lot of kids, they can feel it, but they can't necessarily articulate it, but they know it's in the air,
Yeah,
you know.
for sure.
But for you guys, 19 years of marriage, you guys you got a great relationship. What do you guys disciplined to do in your relationship that allows you guys to thrive?
One thing we do is weekly, like every week, we'll get a sitter and we'll go have lunch and we just kind of talk about like the prior week and like things that we can improve on. And we kind of like compartmentalize different things, work, you know, health, you know, family, kids, school. And we just sort of discuss it all from like a very, you know, analytical place, you know, and like a very like, not judgmental, but sort of like seeing where we can improve. And we're real teammates in that together. And we always have been. Like, you know, I run my production company and I'm full time working, and she works with me, you know, and takes care of our house. And so I think just the fact that we're teammates and everything is great. You know, obviously, sometimes one will do a lion's share of something, but generally speaking, we're in it together on everything.
That's really cool. I mean, the weekly date, like so many couples do not do even that. You know,
Sure, I know.
they skip that one, you know, and I think that's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like anything else, being able to, you know, keep the knife sharp, right? You got to keep sharpening it.
Yeah, we do lunch because we can't stay up late enough to do dinner anymore. But I swear, I got up at 4 a.m. today because I fell asleep at 8 p.m. last night. So I got a solid 8. But I fall asleep with my kids now, and I'm just out, you know?
Yeah.
I'm on like a weird, different schedule now, man.
Isn't it crazy, man? Like same thing. I get up kind of early, but like same thing, like come 9 o'clock, man, like I'm putting my kids down and they're like, you look exhausted. And I'm like, it's because I
am exhausted. I am.
Like, yeah.
My fantasy football league tries to draft at like 6 p.m. I'm like, guys, how about 2? This is going to be 6 hours. Like, you want me up till 10? That's not happening.
No, it's not. Before you know it, we'll be like, when are they going to start serving coffee earlier in the morning at McDonald's, for crying out loud?
I know.
Well, hey, I want to switch gears here a little. Well, actually, one more question. And I'm sure, my gosh, you know, you've had so many decades of like this iconic movie, The Sandlot, but like one of my all-time favorite movies as well. But like, I'm curious, you as a 13-year-old Patrick, and then playing that part, how close was that character to you in real life, or was there no, like, we couldn't have been further from each other? Which one was it?
I would say, you know, 5'6" redhead from Boston. Like, you know, I've had to defend myself and learn how to talk smack, you know, from an early age. So I definitely have a lot of Ham Porter in me. I think the director wrote it, directed it, narrated it. He was that movie, and I think he found a lot of those characters in us, and that was sort of what he was looking for. Obviously, we were all actors too. I think the one that probably differed the most was Tom Gyree, because he was like a black belt, like Van Damme ninja kid, and here he is playing this nerd who can't throw a baseball. So he was probably the furthest from his character. but I probably was closest to Mike. Maybe Mike Vitar was Benny. He was pretty cool, and he's now a firefighter, so he's a real life hero. So, I think most of us were kind of those dudes,
Yeah. Yeah.
They're heightened versions of us, though. Like, I wasn't that loudmouth, but
right.
like, no.
But you had some oomph in you. You had a little bit
I had it in me.
A little bit of flavor in you. I get it, man. Well, I want to switch gears to your book, which, by the way, I just want to thank your team so much for sending me the book because, my kids love it. And that is, this little slugger's guide to the rules of baseball and life, right? And we just literally, my wife and I, we joke about this, but we literally just got out of the busiest season we've ever had as parents in 18 years. And I'll just share with you what that looked like. So my oldest is the drum major in the high school wrestling band, my 18-year-old. He also wrestles. So he does wrestling and that. My junior.
I know where this is going, man, because I got two and I'm like, how do we do all this?
Oh, it's crazy. So basically, I'll shorten the story. 4 kids.
No, don't. I want to hear it.
So my 17-year-old is a starting center for his varsity football team. So Friday Night Lights is a big deal. We get to see both boys on the football field doing different stuff. And then my little guys have always done spring sports. So this past year, my 11-year-old's like, hey, I want to be like my big bro Mason, and I'm going to play football. So he goes into tackle football. Then I bring my 8-year-old to a Blues hockey game last year, and suddenly he has this epiphany that he wants to be a hockey player. And I know that all the hockey parents listening to the show are like, yeah, you didn't know that if your kid plays hockey, you suddenly have a part-time job because that's how demanding it is. But but our life, like for 7-8 months, was like, oh my gosh, we're just like scattered trying to get this kid here and this kid there. And anyway, to make a long story short, I was reading your book to my 8-year-old, and we never let our kids skimp on practice. Like, you made a commitment to this team, you go to practice unless you're sick or whatever else. But I'll tell you, man, out of all these hockey practices that he has every week, there was one night where we had gone through, I'm not kidding, I think it was like 9 straight days of like games and practices. And we were so smoked as a family. And this was a Sunday night. We're like, we haven't had Sunday dinner. We have not had family dinner in like 2 weeks. We're not doing practice tonight. We're not doing 8U hockey practice tonight. We're staying home. We're going to have a nice dinner and we're just going to be. And my 8-year-old like looked at us like, really? Like, we're not going? And I'm like, yeah, we're just not going tonight. And he's like, wow. You could tell he was like surprised. Then I read your book to him that night. And I can't remember what number rule it was, but it says, never, ever, ever, ever skip practice. And he looks at me, he's like, we broke that rule. I'm like, but yeah. I was like, oh, I'm going to have to tell Patrick about this one.
Oh, man. No, it's not never, ever miss practice. I think you're okay to miss practice then, but I think it's more of a general, like, you can't set aside practice. So I think you're okay.
Yeah, we made an excuse for that, but this book is so well written. And I love in the beginning of the book how you also talk about your experience in the Sandlot and then your experience in sports. And it's just like this really cool story. And then each rule has just really descriptive, unique stories to it. And it's a joy to read. It really is. But where's the inspiration to write this?
Gosh, I mean, I think, obviously baseball is America's pastime, and it's sort of the sport that I've grown up with a lot over the years. And, then with the movie, and the movie cemented this sport in, as the top sport for me, for sure. And I think there's something just magical and nostalgic and romantic about the sport of baseball. So it's sort of easy to write these kind of rules that maybe coaching my kids and watching kids play, you see life in baseball. So it makes it a little easier there. So I think, obviously you see life in any sport, but, I don't know, like, watch out for that tackle is not as sweet, as a game of catch is important, It was a really cool, I worked with the senior editor, Nick, of Penguin Random House Books, and it was such a great experience doing it because it was my first time. And obviously, like, they called me asking if I wanted to do it. So I was like, sure, let's do it. And we kind of talked about it, and I was like, it has to be about baseball. And, so just that kind of whole discovery process I really enjoyed with him, and just kind of figuring out all the different rules and just talking about my experiences and putting them in. And it's funny. It's like when you start talking about yourself, like even that first rule where I go into the story of always be ready. I think that's the first
always
one.
Be ready.
Yeah. Which is the story about when that scene where I have the fight scene with the other guy was not written for me, and it was you even say that fork in the road. Like I'll never forget that moment. That was a fork in the road for me, which is like, I'm doing a good job in this movie. I'm kind of becoming the director's go-to guy, at least for the funny stuff. And, he had this scene written for Benny, and Benny similarly was becoming the go-to guy for just the hero and the heartthrob and everything that he was. And he throws the script at me and goes, we're shooting this in an hour. And it's like, that always stuck with me. And so to be able to put that story into a book was really fun. And then just to watch my son go through sports. And he didn't do well the first few years, so there were a lot of lessons from that are in this book. My experiences watching him and I think that's also one of the things that people love about Sandlot is it's a movie about inclusion. And right off the bat, you have this nerd kid, and then we're all laughing at him, and then the best looking, best ball player, hero Benny the Jet is like, you guys are blockheads. Like, leave him alone. He's cool. And I think that's important. That it's an important thing, which is I feel like we put in this book too.
Yeah, it's the book is gold, and I think it just shares so many really cool life lessons with your kids. I am curious. I've written 2 kid books myself, and I'm curious for you, when you were writing this book, like the story I'm telling myself, Patrick, is you were really writing this with probably your boys in mind, and just yeah. Talk to me about that.
Well, when Nick said, who do you want to dedicate this to? I was like, well, that's a no-brainer. I don't think I could have written this book until having kids, because it just, it really does, it puts life in perspective in a different way, it goes fast and you don't want to miss it. And so then you're there and you're present, and it tests everything in you. And, it definitely is the number one thing that's made me want to be a better person. Because to me, man, do I see my faults raising my kids, more than anything. I'm like, oops. Or, you open your stupid phone on Instagram and they're like, do that stupid thing where they ask all the kids what's the worst thing what's the thing they hate the most that their parents do? And they're like, yell at me. And they're like, I'm a horrible dad. I yelled at my kid today, And you see all these things on Instagram that make you feel like they give you so much guilt. But it's true, though, because I'm not perfect and no one's perfect, but you become a better person raising these kids and teaching them lessons. And then it makes you think, like, what lesson do I want to teach them? Which was cool about this book. I was kind of like, what 20 rules on what do I want to talk about? I think Nick and I we kind of came up with the idea of like, let's make it like rules that match baseball and life. And I was like, yeah, I love this idea. And then you're thinking like, what rules do match? And that was cool because it's very easy with baseball. But yeah, you just, I don't know. Kids put things in a different light, that's for sure.
They really do. And in fact, it's, you view one thing when you are a kid, you view the world one way. And then when you become an adult and you become a father, you view it quite a bit different, Yeah. And I'm right there with you, man. I mean, my oldest son that I was telling you about, the one who actually, his Sandlot is still his favorite movie, still watches it all the time. It's interesting, for up until he was about a sophomore in high school, I really saw him struggle with athletics. And not that we put a big spotlight on athletics in our family. We don't. Our motto is go out and find what you love to do.
Yeah.
And we'll support you. And by the way,
you gotta try it all. You gotta try it all. That's all. You just have to try it.
Yeah. And, do your best, learn those lessons in life, those types of things. But, it's not like we're going to try to push you to go be the next, pro athlete or anything like that. But like my oldest son, it was hard, as a dad. And I didn't grow up with any athletic ability myself. But I saw my son struggle through that. And, you know, he tried wrestling, he tried baseball, he tried soccer, he tried all these different things. And as a dad, you're like, wow, like I feel like I should help him, or I feel like I should do something. And then finally, when he was a sophomore, he went back to the wrestling team, and he's been, and last night, even as you and I record, was his senior night, and it was his last home meet ever. And I was like, I'm looking at him, and we had this long conversation when he came home last night. And I was like, dude, I was like, I feel like I've seen you like do this metamorphosis from this boy who's trying to find his way to this young man who is so confident now. And it's just been amazing to watch that journey with him. But I also know, like, when you have a kid that struggles as a dad, you're just like, there's a part of us that I think feels kind of helpless, and we want to push them. We want them to do great, but we also want them to do great for them, not necessarily for us. But I'll tell you, man, I would love for you to give us some advice on what you have found. But I found it really hard to strike that balance when he was younger, like, of what to do.
Oh, yeah. You know, when I play baseball on these teams and there's these kids that are, crushing home runs at 8, and you're like, it's easy to be a dad of a kid who's that good, but at the same time not, because then that brings other pressure, and now you're like, wait, this could be his career. But it's a balance, man, because you want to guide them correctly, and you want them to experience things and not just say, I don't like it. And, Alex Rodriguez said a really cool thing about one of the most important time in a young person's sports career is actually not on the field, it's on the car ride home.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and whatever your methods or your philosophies are, that's where you put it in on that car ride. I've seen people say, don't talk about the game, don't talk about it all, just, let them have fun, or, these conversations, and I've seen that, man, like, I don't want to ever play again. And you're on your car ride home and you're like, oh shoot, what do I do here? So those are the times where I struggle. And thank God for my wife and her relationship with both the boys, because they're super close, but she can get them to do almost anything. But man, it's simple things. Like, my kid loves these little protein bars, and they have little chocolate chips in them. And then I have one, and it's surrounded with chocolate. And I'm like, you got to eat this to get a little protein. He's like, I don't want that one. I'm like, bro, this is your chocolate chip one, just with more chocolate. And he's like, I don't want it. And I'm like, I'm your dad. I know what I'm talking about. You're going to like it. Try it. Tries it. He's like, that's all he wants now. So I'm like, Just listen to me. I know a few things, like, but it's hard to get them to try new things. Kids are just in their little thing. But that's why I want them to at least do sports. You don't have to be pro at any of them. You don't even have to want to do them in high school, but you got to try them at least for a year or two. You got to try them all, know?
Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. Try it out. I mean, like, the other thing too, like, my kids are a little old. My older ones are older than yours. We've often told them this: you have about this much time to do all this stuff. Like, I know you want to go work and you want to go make money. You want to do, you know what? You can do all that. But this is like your time. Like, you'll probably never wrestle again. You'll probably never throw a shot put again. You'll probably never be on the offensive line again, or whatever it is you're going to do. Like, really, really embrace these years, and go all in with these. But I want to go back to one other thing that you said is, and you're right, man. I've been blessed on this podcast to have a plethora of pro athletes. And I ask them that question, like, what was it like for you growing up? What was the car ride home like? And some of them were like, dude, my dad was the best. Like, he just would simply ask me, hey, what was your favorite part of the game? Or like, and then some guys were like, my dad would blast me if I did not perform. So I'm curious for you. I mean, I have a feeling I know exactly what direction you're going to go in, but what is that car ride home with you as a dad after something?
I mean, you don't really hear about, and maybe they just, because they don't tell the stories, but I haven't heard a lot of stories about monster fathers and their super successful sons. Like,
right.
You hear the story about Tiger Woods and his dad was everything to him. And yeah, he was tough. But Tiger Woods' dad was a good dad, and Freddie Freeman, first guy he goes up to when he hits the grand slam, his dad. So I think obviously being too tough on him is not right. And sometimes I'll see that even in the little league, the dads, and I know they mean well, they just want him to do, but there's just no way that having a kid feeling that stress at that age is the right thing. I was playing golf with a pro pitcher on the Dodgers, and I asked him, I said, like, what percentage of kids that are really good at this young age make it? And he's like, it doesn't matter. That young, it doesn't matter. That's not when it matters. And it was cool to hear him say that because it was Joe Kelly. I was like, who was it? Oh yeah, Joe Kelly. But he was like, that age doesn't matter. And that made sense to me because I was like, there's no way whether you're good at 8 or not is going to mean you're playing in the majors. Sorry. Like, there's just no way. So then it is just about finding the love of the game and enjoying. You know, when the World Series happened, my kid's a big Dodger fan, and that's because of his grandmother. His grandma loves baseball. But I was on the East Coast for it, so I was filming this thing for Golf Digest. So I would only make it to like the 5th or 6th inning because I had to get up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. for the thing. And, you know, I would go to bed at 8 on the East Coast, which is, the games are starting, or I'd go to bed at 9 or 10. Right. So, but we were just on the phone the whole time before I fell asleep, and he's just telling me what's happening. And then I forget I was driving home from the airport or something on the final one, and he's just, I couldn't watch. So he's on speaker just telling me everything that's happening. Oh, Shohei's in, and just giving me play-by-plays. And that's what it's about. Like, you want them to have that enjoyment, take it too serious, you know?
100%. And that is, you know, the fun of it, and then the life lessons of it, and the conversations that you get to have with your kids over it. I love it, man. Well, dude, as we wrap up here, guys, I want to point you in the direction of this amazing book. It's a little slugger's guide to unwritten rules of baseball and life. This came out in February, or it's coming out in February 25th, 2025. And I was lucky enough for you to send me a copy of this book, and I've been reading it to my kids, and it is gold. I absolutely love it. I love how you wrote it and how you incorporated just your own story with it, which I really, really enjoyed. But what's got you most excited about the launch of this book?
I think, you know, it's something new, and I just love, you know, I love being an actor and an artist and being able to put that into the written word. I think a kid's book is the perfect way to start. You know, we'll see. I don't know if I could pull off anything longer, you know, with more a fictional story or something, but I think it's just fun. I'm most excited to see people and see the reaction. I'm excited for like the book signings I'm going to do and talk to people about it. You know, it's just something new that I've done that's I'm excited to promote, be part of, and see people. And you know, one of the things I say is hopefully this makes that bedtime routine go, you know, not extra innings. And I think I'm excited about that too. Like, the bedtime routine is nuts, man. So hopefully this book, you know, gets them excited to sit down, and maybe they'll pass out by rule 5 and you can split it up over 3 nights, you know?
Yeah, dude, the bedtime routine, my wife and I joke about it all the time, man. It's like an hour and a half ordeal in this house, man. It's like 20 minutes with each kid. You usually like talking to them about their day, and like my wife always jokes with me. She's like, "So are we gonna make it a longer night or a short one tonight? Are you gonna actually hang out with me?" So, but she'll hang out with the kids too. But yeah. I also just want to ask you too, just as far as 2025 goes, you know, I'm not sure what you have in the books, or if you can even talk about any new projects you have coming up, any new books or any new movies or anything, just for you to share.
Well, I did a couple movies the last few years that both came out this last summer, which was fun. Monster Summer, which was Mel Gibson, and a bunch of kids were in it, and that was a fun one to do. And then You Gotta Believe, which was a true story about the Fort Worth Little League team that made it to the semifinals. And I met the real life guys that it was about, and we've become friends, Robert Ratliff. So that was cool. That was a fun one to do. And then, yeah, like I mentioned to you off before we started, I started a production company. I called it Hambino Athletics, Hambino Media. I have Hambino Athletics too. But so I just started Hambino Media with a really good friend of mine, Kyle Howard, and another friend, Lindsay Moore. And, you know, we have 4 or 5 projects we're developing, and I'm kind of excited to be on the other side of the camera in the producing sense, not directing or writing, but I like to put things together. And then I'm acting in a lot of the projects we're putting together, but it's fun to just be part of the pre-production of it all, and the assembly and the struggles there. And because I'm sort of like a neat freak, organized guy, so I think that lends itself to producing. But yeah, this production company I'm really excited about. So, we'll see, but we have a scripted television show. We're pitching a horror movie, and then some unscripted ones with me. One is with Major League Baseball, and we have a little partnership there or agreement there. We're kind of putting together something, and Golf Digest I'm working with, and a couple different cool companies like that.
That's awesome, man. Good for you. Yeah. That is really cool. I'm excited to see these projects come to life, come to fruition for you. And I appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing your message, sharing your book with and like I said, guys, pick up his book. Pick up this book, read it to your kids. It's way too good not to. Take it from me. We've been reading it now for the past month, so it's been awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, Patrick, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Gentlemen, I'll have all the links in the show notes for you. Head on over to thedadedge.com/528 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/528 for this show. Patrick, thank you again, brother. I wish you nothing but the best.
I appreciate it. You too.